Hey guys, how you doing? It's John Paul Gates, aka John the Film Actor, and welcome to the second of Secrets of the Movie Actor, where I talk about all my individual movies, 81 of them. So anyway, today we're going to talk about my second film, which was called Hawk and the Dove, which was a romantic thriller in the vein of Natural Born Killers, shot up in Scotland in the year 2000, marking a new century and a new millennium. And in it, I play Harry Gillespie, also the lead. This was my second film, but thankfully I was cast as the lead. And I suppose the best way to describe Harry was he was a nerdy accountant stroke bookkeeper working or freelancing for extortionists, gangsters, madams, you name it. And one day he decides unexpectedly and inexplicably to, in a way, embezzle their funds and go to a remote island, which happened to be in Scotland, shacked up with a local prostitute called Ebony. And he waits for those embezzlers and extortionists, one by one, to come and try and take those funds back. So in essence, that's what the plot is about. It's called The Hawk and the Dove because initially, when you first see it, you see Ebony being the local prostitute as the hawk. She's encouraging him to do this because, let's face it, ordinarily speaking, he's a monotonous accountant. He really wouldn't get involved in all that kind of thing. And so at that point, initially, he's the dove. Harry is the dove. But of course, you learn throughout the film because accidentally initially you don't think it's premeditated, and they both of them coupled together to kill off his pursuers, the embezzlers and drug peddlers and extortionists. But you find out he's actually quite psychotic and he's actually leading Ebony astray as opposed to the other way around. So therefore, he's the hawk and she's the dove. As I say, the reason why it's very natural born killers, Woody Harrelson, I can't remember the actress who played opposite him, is that it does have that kind of vibe and they're very understated, particularly him. It was shot, as I say, in Scotland in 2000, and it was shot by Palm Tree Productions. The director was Robbie Moffat, who I ended up working with quite a lot in the noughties. I think I probably did about 10 films with him. So this was the first. And as I say, it was shot in Argyll, the Isle of Bute, between Tarbert at the northern end of the Isle of Bute and Campbelltown, and it was shot in between probably the space of, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 miles, because that's pretty much the Isle of Bute. And it was shot again like Cold Fish, my first film. It was shot on film. It was shot on the Cinealta camera, and it was shot on Super 16. So no, actually, I tell a lie. It wasn't shot on Super 16. What am I talking about? It was actually shot on video, HD. It was the first film, I think. No, I'll tell a lie. Actually, no, I'm wrong. It was shot on Super 16 because I remember them having to send over we would view the rushes after they've been processed and telecined. So anyway, so yeah, as I say, that's basically the plot. And as I say, that was my character. Now, because he went through this transformation, what I suggested to the director, and obviously he concurred, I thought it would be a good idea to show the demarcation line and the change in arc in character, that he went from having brown hair to blonde hair as a way of, because he was bespectacled as well. He was wearing glasses. He was the archetypal accountant, and he So he went to the hairdressers and he became blonde, and in a way that showed the change in character. And yeah, as I say, it was shot up in Scotland. I really enjoyed my time up there. Interesting little anecdotes. I remember when we were shooting in Tarbert, the director decided that he wanted a wide angle shot. So he went to the top of the hill, which took him and the rest of the crew probably about 20 minutes to half an hour. And I remember I was working with an actor called James Watson, and his character was pursuing me. And the director said, Robbie, that he wanted us to, in a way, start from one point of the town and run all the way through it. Now, this was, I wasn't aware that, obviously, being a guerrilla film, I wasn't aware that the filmmakers hadn't actually got permission to shoot this particular sequence, particularly when you're waving guns around and knives. So anyway, I remember he went, as I say, the director and the crew went to the top of the hill. We had a walkie-talkie, they had a walkie-talkie, and then once they'd set up, after we'd been waiting half an hour twiddling our thumbs and people looking at us strange because obviously we were dressed differently, and we obviously had to hide the weapons that we had. And as I say, we got the call, action, and then basically we had to run. And I do remember, I didn't see it at the time because obviously I was in the moment, but I do remember watching the rushers subsequently. You can see the reactions from the crowd as though they think it's, those people residing in Tarbert, they actually think there's somebody being pursued. Luckily, the police weren't called, but at the same time, it was slightly. I had quite a few heart palpitations, as you can probably appreciate. The film itself was sold eventually on Amazon, which I believe it's still up on Amazon almost 20 years later. It didn't have a cinema release, but it sold various territories worldwide. And indeed, it became, I suppose, the inspiration for another film called Number Runner, which was made 14 years later in the United States. So in essence, the director decided he wanted, because of the success of the first one, he wanted to, in a way, give it an American flavor. So we shot Number Runner in 2014 in Utah in the United States. And of the cast that remained, obviously I continued in my role of Harry Gillespie, but obviously my extortionists and the people I worked for were American actors. So we had people like Marty Cove from the Karate Kid movies and Cagney and Lacey. We had Patrick Kilpatrick from Mission Impossible and Free Willy. And of course, we had Leslie Easterbrook, who's famed for being Callahan, the red hot Callahan in all the Police Academy films. So that was a great experience. And again, that film, Number Runner, can be seen on Amazon and other video on demand platforms. As I say, all in all, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed my time in Scotland. In fact, I can't recommend it enough. I've shot quite a few movies. I think I've probably shot 13, 14 movies, or let's say feature films, because I know this is going to an international audience. And if I say movies, Americans would understand that, but feature films, it's probably more appropriate to use that for an international audience. Yeah, so as I say, it was a great experience. Love working up there. I like that flora and fauna. I mean, you've got all the locks. Oh yes, and actually, just talking about lock, about another interesting experience. I remember I was fighting a Glaswegian actor who, a guy called Ian Sterling, great character, great actor, and I remember we had to both go in the water. So we were fighting on a boat. We were out in Loch Lomond, I think it was, and we rowed out there. And then, of course, we started having a struggle. And myself and Ian, who played Bingo Brown, that was it, Bingo Brownie's character. So we had a bit of a scuffle in the boat, and then we went head first into the water. And the idea is obviously with the help of Ebony, who was also in the boat, she would dive into the water afterwards. And I remember when we went into the water, myself and Ian Sterling, because locks, they don't warm up even in the summertime because, they just don't. And anyway, we went into the water, and I remember the rush, the adrenaline rush of how cold it was. And, needless to say, we didn't last long in there, which you can probably understand because it was so cold. I remember shivering for a day or two afterwards, even though obviously I got into a hot shower pretty much soon afterwards. But we didn't fight that long in the water. I mean, the idea is that I was supposed to, with the aid and abetting of Ebony, I was supposed to drown Bingo Brown, but we didn't do it as well as perhaps we should have done because it was so bloody cold. I know what actors go through, particularly when they're working in all sorts of adverse weather conditions. But yeah, so that's, as I say, two little anecdotes pertaining to the film The Hawk and the Dove, number one, where I failed miserably in trying to kill off one of my pursuers, Bingo Brown, and the other was where I was working with the actor James Watson, where we had to run throughout the town of Tarbert and wielding weapons, and it was interesting to see how the residents of Tarbert reacted. But thank you again, residents of Tarbert, that you didn't call the police, otherwise the production probably would have been shut down. But again, that's an evidence of guerrilla, low-budget filmmaking, that you just have to go and do it, and it's everything for the art, whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera. And I think Robbie Moffat had that ability to do it, and being Scottish, he always used to say to me that whenever we went onto a location, and he said to me, in Scotland, you have the right to roam. So in other words, pretty much every bit of land is in the public interest and therefore public domain, and so everybody can use it. So yeah, so anyway, so basically that was my second film, called The Hawk and the Dove, a romantic thriller very much in the vein of Natural Born Killers. It's still available today on Amazon as its sequel, Number Runner. And it was the first of many films with Palm Tree, and the first of several films in Scotland, which I certainly endorse as a location. So as I say, guys, this is John the Film Actor, aka John Paul Gates, and I'll see you on the next episode of Secrets of the Movie Actor.